If someone ever told you that love can conquer all boundaries, let the story of Jake remind you. A boy who grew up in a crumbling, tin-roof house, now stepping out of a limousine, hand in hand with Emily, the only daughter of a powerful billionaire. Their wedding sent the media into a frenzy, while the internet split into debates. Is Jake lucky or just climbing the ladder? But only he and Emily truly know how they fell in love. Jake Anderson was born in a rundown working-class neighborhood on the outskirts of Kansas. His childhood was marked by scarce meals, nights sleeping to the sound of passing trains, and a single mother working 2 jobs to keep him in school. But Jake had something not everyone does, an unbreakable will to rise. He excelled in school, earned a full scholarship to a top economics university, and there, in a lecture hall, he met Emily, a girl with golden hair, emerald green eyes, and a smile that silenced the entire room. Emily was unlike anyone Jake had ever known. No arrogance, no pretense. Despite being the daughter of one of America's most famous billionaires, Richard Winston. She loved Jake's intelligence and humility, while Jake fell for her kind heart and listening eyes. They loved each other quietly, defying whispers, judgmental stares from friends, and the cautious, powerful gaze of Mr. Winston. After 3 years of love, they married. The wedding took place at a 5-star beach resort in California, where white roses lined the aisle, and the media swarmed to capture a modern fairy tale. The public called Jake Cinderella, but no one saw Emily's tears of joy as her father, for the first time, walked her down the aisle and whispered to Jake, "Don't ever hurt her." After the ceremony, Jake was appointed director of the Western Business Division at Winston Group. With his father-in-law's support, he had a chauffeured car, a luxurious office, and a talented team. Jake's life turned a new page, wealthy, glamorous, and full of promise. But standing before the mirror in a $5,000 suit, Jake still saw the poor boy he once was, the one who swore he'd never be a dependent. And he began to believe that he, not Emily, was the one steering this life. Perhaps that was the first moment pride started to overshadow love. In a hospital room bathed in sunlight, the first cries of baby Lily echoed like a melody of joy, marking a new chapter in Emily and Jake's lives. Jake held Emily's hand tightly, his eyes brimming with tears as he gazed at their tiny daughter cradled in his wife's arms. In that moment, everything felt perfect, but life rarely holds on to perfection for long. After Lily's birth, Emily poured all her time and heart into her daughter. Sleepless nights, the stress of being a first-time mother, and a lack of exercise caused her to gain significant weight. The stylish dresses she once wore now felt tight, and Emily began to feel insecure about her appearance. Jake, though he loved his wife and child, couldn't help but notice the change. At the same time, Richard Winston, Emily's father and the founder of Winston Group, faced a severe financial crisis. Failed investments and fierce market competition shook his business empire to its core. News of Winston Group's plummeting value flooded the headlines, and Richard grew increasingly silent, consumed by worry. Jake, as the director of the Western branch, felt the pressure of the company's decline acutely. Tense meetings, declining sales, and the looming threat of job cuts weighed heavily on him. He started bringing that stress home, becoming quieter, more irritable. Emily noticed the change in her husband, but she was struggling with her own challenges, and the distance between them grew. One evening, as Emily tried to soothe Lily to sleep, Jake sat on the sofa, staring at the TV screen, his mind clearly elsewhere. Emily gently placed Lily in her crib, then walked over to sit beside her husband. "Jake, are you okay?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. Jake sighed, avoiding her gaze, and replied, "I'm just tired, Emily. Work's a mess, and I need time to think." Emily placed her hand on his, but Jake gently pulled away, stood up, and walked to the bedroom, leaving Emily sitting there with a flood of questions and a nameless sadness. In the days that followed, Jake spent more time at the office or out, claiming it was for work. Emily felt lonely in her own home, but she tried to reassure herself that this was just a tough phase, that things would get better. Yet deep down, she couldn't ignore the growing sense of unease. As the office lights dimmed, Jake sat silently in front of his computer screen, the glaring red numbers signaling the relentless decline of the branch he managed. Once a promising director, he now felt like a failure, trapped between the pressures of work and the unwanted changes in his family life. After Richard Winston, Jake's father-in-law, faced a severe financial crisis, Winston Group began its downward spiral. Failed investments and fierce competition slashed the company's value. Jake, as the director of the Western branch, felt the weight of this collapse. Sales plummeted, projects stalled, and the threat of layoffs loomed. Each day at work became a battle for Jake. Tense board meetings, tough financial decisions, and the pressure to hold on to his position drained his passion and drive. He started doubting his abilities, feeling like a mere pawn in the power games of his wife's family. At home, Jake found no solace. Emily, after giving birth, devoted herself to their daughter Lily. She was exhausted, stressed, and paid less attention to him. Her changed appearance and mindset made Jake feel distant. He missed the early days of their love, when Emily was radiant and full of energy. Now she was always busy with motherhood, neglecting herself and him. Jake began seeking an escape from his stifling reality. He spent more time at bars after work, bonding with colleagues who shared his frustrations. Their conversations revolved around complaints, about work, about family life not meeting expectations. Jake felt trapped in a vicious cycle with no way out. One night, returning home late, Jake saw Emily asleep on the sofa. Lily nestled in her arms. He looked at them, a flicker of love still there, but buried beneath layers of resentment and disappointment. Jake wondered if this was the life he'd wanted, if he was truly living for himself or just playing the role of a perfect husband and father society expected. Negative thoughts increasingly consumed Jake's mind. He began comparing his current life to the dreams he once had. Jake felt he'd lost himself in his marriage to Emily, that he was no longer his own man, but merely an extension of her family. This growing resentment pushed him toward decisions that could change his life forever. In the dim glow of an upscale bar, Jake sat across from Sarah, a young partner with a captivating smile. Her laughter seemed to chase away all his worries. For the first time in months, Jake felt alive, desired, but he didn't know that chasing this feeling would change his life forever. The pressures of work and the growing distance between him and Emily, who had gained weight, left Jake feeling suffocated. He began seeking escape in parties and fleeting relationships. Sarah, with her alluring looks and sweet attention, became his new anchor. At first, Jake saw his relationship with Sarah as a temporary distraction, a way to flee reality. But slowly, he was swept into a whirlwind of passion and novelty. Sarah gave him a sense of freedom. No strings, no responsibilities, something he'd craved for so long. One evening, after coming home late, Jake and Emily had a heated argument. Emily confronted him about his changed behavior, about the nights he didn't come home. Instead of explaining, Jake hurled harsh words about how Emily had changed after childbirth, how she was no longer attractive. Those words stabbed Emily's heart like a knife. Not long after, Jake decided to leave his family. He packed his bags, took the last of his savings, and moved in with Sarah. He believed he'd found new happiness, a life free of pressure and duty. Meanwhile, Emily faced the pain of betrayal. But instead of crumbling, she resolved to stand up, to change herself, and to reclaim what she'd lost. The house now felt eerily silent, chillingly cold. The wedding photos on the wall turned mocking in Emily's eyes. She sat dazed on the sofa, her wedding ring still on her finger, but that hand now only held her loneliness. From the bedroom, baby Lily's cries pierced the air, a sound that jolted Emily awake, a reminder. It was time to live. Not just for herself, but for her daughter. Everything seemed to collapse around Emily. She hadn't just lost her partner, she was facing the downfall of two worlds, her family and her career. Each morning, she woke with dark circles under her eyes, her post-pregnancy body heavy, and the same questions looping in her mind. Why did he leave me? Is it because I'm not beautiful anymore? She looked at herself in the mirror. Her less toned figure, her sorrowful eyes, her hair hastily tied back. This wasn't the Emily of the early days, the one who'd graced magazine covers with Jake, who'd stepped out of a limousine with a radiant smile. She felt she'd lost everything. But in that dark moment, a thought sparked. If I've lost it all, why not start over from scratch? Emily didn't want Lily to grow up amidst weakness and bitterness. She began with small steps, waking up earlier, doing yoga from videos, cooking clean meals, and journaling her emotions daily. Each time Lily smiled at her, it was like a dose of revival, a reason to keep going. She also returned to her books. Though she'd studied business management, Emily had long lived in her father's shadow. Now she enrolled in online courses on corporate restructuring, e-commerce, and even managerial psychology. At night after Lily slept, Emily sat at her desk, eyes red but determined, poring over documents, learning how to pull her father's company out of crisis. Sometimes in the late hours, memories of Jake flooded back. She remembered his laughter, their snowy Christmases together, the look in his eyes when he first saw Lily. But now she knew. She couldn't live in the past forever. Jake had chosen to leave. She wouldn't. She chose to stay, to be strong. Emily slowly reclaimed herself, but this time not as the billionaire's daughter, not as Jake's wife, but as an independent, resilient woman, starting anew from the ashes. The day Richard Winston passed away, the sky poured with rain, as if the heavens themselves mourned the fall of a brilliant icon. Emily stood under a black umbrella, holding Lily in her arms, her eyes red but resolute. Yet among the hundreds who came to pay their respects, Jake was nowhere to be found. Not a message, not a call. He'd chosen to walk away from a family, a past, and now, even a funeral. Richard's death was the final, devastating blow. He, the father who adored Emily, who once guided Jake into the business world, left quietly, taking with him unfulfilled dreams and a crumbling empire. Winston Group, once America's pride, now teetered on the brink of bankruptcy. Emily had just weeks to decide, sell off the shares and walk away, or bear the burden of standing up to preserve her father's legacy. And she chose the latter. Emily called an emergency board meeting, taking the chairman's seat for the first time, a seat once reserved for Richard. The shareholders' eyes still held doubt. This girl only knows diapers and childcare. What does she know about running a corporation? But Emily didn't waver. She presented a bold restructuring plan, cut unprofitable branches, focus on e-commerce, and reinvest in green energy technology. Richard's unfulfilled dream. She spoke with a strange confidence, but inside were sleepless nights, pages of online course notes, and moments of crying alone in an empty boardroom. Emily visited each branch, meeting every employee, listening, understanding, and inspiring. She didn't arrive in a luxury car with bodyguards. She took ride shares, wore a white blouse, her hair tied back neatly, like a warrior rallying a weary army back to the front lines. Whenever she faced setbacks, she thought of her father and the bitter absence of Jake at the funeral. She'd loved him with all her heart, believed he was a man of ambition, but Jake hadn't just left. He'd turned his back on everything that had once lifted him up. From that disappointment, Emily found a new strength, no longer waiting for someone to save her, nor needing anyone to pay for her pain. She wasn't doing this for revenge. She did it for Lily, for her father, and for herself, the woman once left behind, now learning to stand tall, head held high. Jake sat alone in an empty apartment, the streetlights casting long shadows across the walls through the window. His phone lay silent. No more sweet messages from Sarah. No more important work calls. He traded everything, only to realize he was left with nothing but empty hands and a deep, aching loneliness. After leaving Emily and his family, Jake joined Orion Industries, a direct competitor to Winston Group. He believed that with his experience and knowledge of Winston Group, he'd quickly rise and prove his worth. At first, Orion welcomed him warmly, using his insights to outmaneuver Winston Group in the market. Jake felt on top of the world, recognized and valued. But things didn't go as planned. Once they'd extracted all his information, Orion's leadership began to see him as a tool past its usefulness. They assigned him trivial projects, sidelined him from strategic decisions. Jake realized he was just a pawn in the power games between corporate giants. Meanwhile, his relationship with Sarah began to crack. Sarah, initially drawn to Jake's charm and glamour, grew bored as his status and finances dwindled. She started disappearing, spending time at lavish parties with other wealthy men. Jake tried to hold on, but Sarah coldly declared she didn't want to continue the relationship. She left him, abandoning Jake to face a harsh reality alone. Jake lost his job at Orion Industries when they no longer needed him. With no income, no family by his side, he spiraled into crisis. He realized his past mistakes had led him to this point. He thought of Emily, of Lily, of the family he'd abandoned. But was there any chance left for him to turn back? At a major economic conference in San Francisco, all eyes turned to the stage as the name Emily Winston echoed through the hall. In a pristine white suit, striding with unshakable confidence and a radiant face, no one could recognize the woman who'd once been betrayed by her husband, who'd once stood on the brink of collapse. She was no longer just Richard Winston's billionaire daughter. She was now Emily Winston, a powerful CEO at the helm of a new empire. After months of relentless effort in restructuring, Emily had brought Winston Group back into the race. No longer reliant on traditional networks, she led the company into green technology, digital commerce, and AI-integrated operations. Bold ideas the old board had once dismissed. At the same time, she transformed herself, not just intellectually, but physically. A healthy diet, regular exercise, and a positive outlook made Emily youthful, sharp, and more captivating than ever. The media hailed her as the new icon of women in the digital age. And Lily, her little daughter, would proudly tell her friends, "My mom is the best in the world." And then, Jake returned. One afternoon, Emily received a brief email. "I have no excuses left. I only asked for a chance to start over. Not for me, but for Lily." Below the message was the name Jake Anderson, the man who'd once abandoned her, abandoned their family. Emily stared at the screen. The anger she'd once felt was gone, replaced by silence. She knew she'd moved far beyond those old wounds. But when she thought of Lily, a child who still asked, "Where's Daddy, Mommy?" her heart tightened softly. After days of reflection, Emily made her decision. Jake was reinstated at Winston Group, but not as a senior advisor or manager like before. She gave him a chance as the director of the Western Region branch, where he'd once started. No privileges, no favors, just work, goals, and responsibility. When Jake stepped into the room to sign the contract, he froze at the sight of Emily sitting before him, her figure slender, her gaze calm, and a faint smile that no longer held the softness of the past. "Are you sure you can handle the job?" she asked. Jake nodded. "I'm not asking for affection, just a chance to do right." Emily said nothing more. She pointed to the contract. "Sign it, but remember the first condition? Always be a worthy father." In a lavish ballroom, the twinkling lights reflected off Emily's pristine wedding gown. She stood there, radiant and joyful beside Michael, the man who'd stood by her through every storm. Jake, at the back row, felt his eyes blur with tears as he witnessed the scene. Tears rolled down his cheeks, carrying memories and regrets of the past. After Winston Group recovered and thrived under Emily's leadership, she not only restored the company's status, but also found balance in her personal life. Michael, a dedicated and sincere colleague, had been by her side through her toughest moments. Their mutual support and deep understanding blossomed into true love. Emily and Michael's relationship grew naturally, rooted in respect and shared values. Michael wasn't just a partner in work, but a steadfast pillar in Emily and Lily's lives. He cherished Lily, treating her as his own daughter. Their decision to marry came after much thought and consideration. They held an intimate wedding, attended by close family, friends, and colleagues. Emily, in an elegant wedding gown, held Michael's hand as they walked down the aisle, her eyes brimming with happiness and faith in their future. Jake received an invitation from Emily. At first he hesitated, unsure if he should attend. But in the end, he decided to go, to wish her well and to face his own emotions. At the ceremony, Jake sat quietly in the back row, watching everything unfold. As Emily and Michael exchanged vows, Jake couldn't hold back his emotions. Tears streamed down his face. He realized he'd lost the most precious thing in his life. Yet he also understood that Emily deserved this new happiness, and he sincerely wished her well. After the ceremony, Jake approached Emily and Michael. He offered his congratulations and thanked Emily for giving him a chance to return to the company. Emily smiled, replying, "We've all grown and learned from the past. Let's build a better future together." Jake left the reception with a lighter heart. He knew he needed to move forward, to learn from his mistakes and cherish what he still had. Michael stepped into the house, his heart heavy after a stressful day at work. As he walked toward the living room, he froze at the sight of Jake and Emily sitting close on the sofa, laughing and talking happily. The image pierced his heart like a dagger, stirring deep insecurities and doubts. After Emily allowed Jake back into Lily's life, he began visiting their daughter on scheduled days. The relationship between Jake and Emily had grown more amicable, sharing the responsibility of raising Lily. But one afternoon, when Michael came home earlier than usual, he stumbled upon a scene that sent his emotions into turmoil. Jake and Emily were on the sofa, chatting and laughing with Lily. From Michael's perspective, their closeness seemed to cross a line. Jealousy and fear surged within him. He couldn't stop himself from wondering if Emily and Jake were rekindling their past. Not wanting to make a scene in front of Lily, Michael stayed silent, but his mind was clouded with suspicion. That night, he decided to check the home security cameras to see what had happened while he was away. The footage showed Jake arriving to visit Lily, playing and talking with her. Emily joined in, but there was nothing beyond the actions of a mother and father caring for their child. Still not fully reassured, Michael spoke to Martha, the housekeeper who'd been with the family for years and had seen everything unfold. Martha assured him there was nothing suspicious between Emily and Jake. They were simply co-parenting Lily and maintaining a good relationship for her sake. Realizing he'd let baseless doubts cloud his judgment, Michael felt a wave of regret. He approached Emily, took her hand, and said earnestly, "I'm sorry, Emily. I let unfounded suspicions get the better of me. I trust you and know you always put our family first." Emily smiled gently, replying, "I understand how you feel, Michael. We both want what's best for Lily. Jake and I are just friends, raising her together. You don't need to worry." From that moment, Michael learned a lesson about trust and the importance of communication in marriage. He vowed to always share his feelings and concerns with Emily, rather than bottling them up and letting unnecessary misunderstandings arise. In the elegant boardroom of Winston Group, Emily stood before the senior leadership, confidently presenting a new strategy. Her eyes sparkled with determination, reflecting the strength of a true leader. Jake, seated in the back row, watched in silence, his heart swelling with indescribable emotions as he witnessed the woman he'd once abandoned, now standing as a symbol of success and resilience. Under Emily's brilliant leadership, Winston Group didn't just recover, it soared, becoming a leading force in green technology and e-commerce. She proved that with unwavering will and relentless effort, no challenge was too great to overcome. Jake, after being given a second chance by Emily to work at the Western Region branch, worked diligently to prove himself. He realized his past mistakes had cost him dearly, but they also taught him lessons about responsibility and maturity. The relationship between Emily and Jake grew more amicable, no longer marked by resentment or regret, but by mutual respect and cooperation for Lily's sake. Jake spent regular time with his daughter, showing he'd truly changed and become a better father. Michael, after his earlier misunderstanding, cherished and loved Emily even more. He understood that trust and communication were the bedrock of their marriage. Together, they built a happy family, where Lily grew up surrounded by the love of her parents and stepfather. Jake, though he'd lost his chance with Emily, no longer felt regret or jealousy. He understood that everyone has their own path, and the key was to accept and grow from mistakes. He continued his work at Winston Group, contributing to its growth and finding new meaning in his life. The story closed with Emily, Michael, Lily, and Jake together at Winston Group's success celebration. They raise their glasses in a toast, leaving behind the past's turmoil and looking toward a brighter future.